Hello everyone and welcome. Make a cup of your favorite drink and get comfortable because this is a wonderful time for news stories from Yellow Cat. Send your own stories in the comments below and maybe they'll be in our new video. Bosses of Reddit, what is the most messed up reason you have had to fire an employee for? We're looking for a new secretary for our QA department, so he hired this lady. Her CV was quite impressive as she worked in the document and data control department of another company for 7 years, which is what we wanted. We thought she would be mature because her age was over 40. I guess we made an A of ourselves because we were dead wrong. First up is that she would never stop complaining about the most trivial things. It got so bad, the prankster in me decided to play a game with her where I would stick stickers on her face every time she complained. On the first day, I had dispensed about 6 to 7 stickers. She would constantly brag about how her husband dotes on her like she was a spoiled princess and she never did any cleaning or housework and acts proud of it. She had a disagreement about the safety rules where if there was an emergency, we should make our work area safe and then leave. She said we should just drop what we are doing and not bother to make our working area safe because she felt it wasn't her responsibility, and in that 2 seconds she took to make her area safe, the ceiling would collapse on her. I asked her, what if the person was a welder? Should he or she just stop and not make his or her area safe and leave the welding torch on? She actually said, yes, that is not his problem, it is someone else. I got so fed up, I took her to the HSE department and had the employees there, including an actual safety officer, explain it to her, but she still refused to listen. In our company, when we send out documents, we would need to prepare a form called a transmittal for proof of transfer. Sounds simple and like a secretary's job, right? She actually said she didn't want to do it and someone else should do it. I told her that was sort of like a firefighter who didn't like to fight fires, a chef who didn't like to cook, a programmer who didn't use computers, a taxi driver who hates driving, etc. The real kicker comes when we had an audit on our company, and while we were having a meeting with the auditors, she was blaring the music at a loud volume. We asked her nicely to turn it down because the auditors couldn't hear us, and her response was, "You can just shout!" We had to apologize to them for her behavior. Later that same day, while we were showing the auditors our company and came back in the afternoon, we found the whole office empty, door unlocked, and lights on. She was nowhere to be found and never came back that afternoon. Not even a note saying where she had gone. And all this happened in less than 3 weeks. About the stickers part, but it really isn't as bad as it sounds. Here's the explanation. I was doing her a favor actually by finding another way to get her to stop complaining as to lower her job performance evaluation, as I am not the direct guy in charge of her. There were just small stickers you would put on a calendar to mark holidays, etc., and she bought a few of them. Yes, they were even her stickers. I got the first one in by being sneaky and announced every time she complained I would stick one on her face. And later, when she would complain, I would very audibly sigh, get up from my seat, and walk over to her and stick one on. She would just take them off immediately and then stick them to her desk though. First afternoon, about 6 to 7 stickers. After that, it was only like 2 per half day, so I guess it sorta worked. Sometimes she would complain and I would give her a chance and ask, "What did you just say?" And she would repeat it, and then I had no choice but to stick one on her. How did I get away with it? I'm charming and she thought it was funny, not bullying and just a joke. Had an employee who was doing really well in sales and recruiting. I kept getting calls from former employees saying they never received their checks. It turns out he had stolen 7 of them from my office and signed them over to himself by forging their signatures. I'm not saying construction workers are some S people because everyone on my family is a construction worker. You have tradesmen, then you have guys that show up at these big sites to work months or only weeks at a time. Every other year or so, we have to hire a lot of temporary workers for temporary plant shutdowns. Most of the time, half of them leave when you hand them the P cup for the drug test. So we had a new batch in. A lot of guys come to work in groups, 3 or 4 of them ride together, and if you fire one of them, you lose all of them because that is their only ride. Anyway, one new group comes in. They've been working a couple days, and one of them, Jim, is talking to my brother. He tells my brother about his 3-year-old daughter. She has some kind of brain tumor and is in and out of the hospital. She has a slew of health problems and isn't expected to live a long life. My brother had a daughter the same age at the time. The guy is pretty tore up talking about her and shows my brother all his pictures he carries in his wallet. Talks about all the different hospitals she's been in and out of, the different type of specialists she has to see, etc. Pretty sad stuff. You hate to hear about a child suffering so much. Fast forward 2 or 3 days. One of the guys that rides with Jim has laid out of work. He shows up one morning and my brother is like, "Where the H have you been?" The dude is like, "Man, I'm sorry for not calling, but my daughter has brain cancer and I had to take her to the ER. What? My brother looks at me. "Did you hear that?" I do the bookwork. I had the guy's W-2 single, no dependents. He calls Jim over. So we got Jim and the liar there together. My brother looked at them and said, "Whichever one of you two doesn't have a sick daughter, grab your S and get the F out of here." Jim looks perplexed for a second, but the other guy just turned around and picked his ass up and left without saying another word. We gave Jim the benefit of the doubt because he seemed really sincere and the information he gave us about his daughter seemed pretty credible. But the sad thing is, we run up on some pretty worthless human beings and the S you hear. We were super tight about overtime, yet there was an S-load of work to get done. To make himself look good, the night shift supervisor would let guys stay late, but then go into the system and take off some of their overtime hours. He was careful not to do too much, so it took longer than you would think for one of the guys to question their pay. We fired him and walked him out before we told anyone. The third shift crew was pretty rough, so who knows what they would have done to that guy. This was a long time ago, so I would assume most software has some auditing built in to catch this kind of stuff now. This girl kept calling in sick randomly around 3 to 4 shifts a month. She'd always make different excuses. "My car broke down, I have the flu, blah blah blah." Well, this one night, she said she was in the hospital for some infection. A few of us went for drinks after work to watch the hockey game, and there she was, on TV, on the kiss cam in a city 1,200 kilometers away. When she came back to work 4 days later, I made small talk about her hospital visit. She made up some stories. Then I said, "Hey, take a look at this. Doesn't this look like you and your husband?" and showed her a YouTube clip one of the guys cut from his PVR. I had to fire someone for doing her job. It was seriously the most effed up nonsense. I was a manager at a hotel near an airport, and we were woefully understaffed for a hotel of our size. Almost 200 rooms, thousands of square feet of banquet space, one desk agent on duty at any time. I made a strict do not leave the desk policy because corporate was anal about the phone being answered on or before the second ring without exception. We didn't have a cordless phone, so someone had to be right by the phone at all times. Our director of sales came down one day and asked my newest hire to go find me. My agent, bless her heart, explained that she couldn't leave the desk and corporate instituted a no cell phones in the building policy, so there was no way of reaching me while I was doing a security sweep. Apparently, my desk agent staunchly refused and told the director of sales where I might be and that she could find me herself. The next day, I came in to 4 emails and a voicemail from the president of our company saying that our director of sales had lodged a formal complaint of insubordination against the new girl and had given an ultimatum that either the new girl get fired or the DOS quits. The DOS was phenomenal at selling and brought in millions of dollars in new contracts in under 3 months of being there. So I either had to terminate her immediately or I would be replaced. Worst firing ever. We were both confused and angry, but I had to remain stern and boss-like while escorting her off the property, and then was told to never hire inflexible people ever again or they would replace me. I quit that job a month later. I wasn't the boss at the time, but I was one of the cooks. The AGM, Assistant General Manager, was one of the nicest guys around, so fun to work with. As a cook with got a percentage of the sales as a tip every second Friday opposite our paychecks, kind of like a mini paycheck, it was nice. They would hold on to them for 3 months after you started, and if you stayed there, if them to you in a big bulk amount. Awesome. But when it came around to my turn, I got about $150. Wasn't aware at the time, but I was young and stoked on $150. 2 weeks later, I got another one, and it was $60. I was like, if I got $60 after 2 weeks, how does 3 months get me $150? The AGM was stealing all our tips, not just the first one either. Half or so of our bi-weekly ones, buying an S-ton of Coke, stealing the branch's money too. Ended up owing somewhere upwards 60 grand. Effing P. At an ad agency, sitting in a meeting with a $10 million account client. From my agency, the owner/president, account director, creative director, media director, me, account manager, and my coordinator is in the room. My coordinator was this young bird right out of college, very ambitious, with lots of energy, but very outspoken and brash. I've had to speak with her a number of times about keeping quiet in meetings and focusing on taking notes and waiting until afterwards to ask questions and not argue with anything anyone says in the meeting or make any grossed out faces. Out of habit, whenever anyone said anything she didn't agree with, she'd make this disgusted face as if someone just farted in her mouth. She always cried when I had to rein her in and remind her that she was overstepping her boundaries. Awkward. Before the meeting, I had a quick recap with her that she's there to listen and take notes and that not even I was going to do any talking, but merely to support the directors. Anyways, during the meeting, while we're talking about target audiences, she decides to chirp up and talk about herself and her group of friends about how they should be who we decide to target. And she starts going into detail about the reasons why, and in doing so, she casually mentions taking recreational drugs and hooking up on one-night stands. I put my hand slowly over her notebook to try to signal her to stop, but she had already gone off the rails. The owner finally stepped up and basically told her to shut up right in the middle of it, and she started crying. It was so embarrassing. The meeting ended quickly after, and we agreed to finish it at the client's office the next day instead. After the meeting, I sat her down in another room with, and she started crying to me about how peeved she was that the owner made her look like an idiot in the meeting, and that she was so mad that she was threatening to quit. I tried to get her to understand why the owner had to step in and keep her in line, but she just couldn't be reasoned with. She was fired by the end of the day, and in the exit meeting was crying and was saying that we didn't have a good enough reason and was begging for a second chance. It was brutal. We hired a young woman to work in our shop, and she was supposed to start at 10 Monday morning. She didn't show up. We weren't able to get in touch with her till the afternoon when she told us that she had forgotten that she had a new job. Because she was a friend's niece, we gave her a second chance. Tuesday morning, and she didn't show up. She phoned us at 11 to say she would be right in and could she have Wednesday off because today's my sister's birthday and we're gonna get wrecked. We told her not to bother coming in. Thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing, the likes, and the comments. See you in the next video.